Welcome to Fandom Knight, the show that gets to Warp 5.
Yeah, on paper.
I'm your host.
I'm sorry, sir. We've given her all she's got.
I'm your host, Ripley Bill William Bush, and let's do the co-host thing first.
Shane McCree, Proto Guy.
Seth Level, sorry. I'm a disembodied voice.
Named Jeremy. And I am Nick, the Lone Paladin, and we have nobody else other than this light. Why is this light on? Turn that shit off. It's hot up here.
You like that light?
Maybe the light wants to introduce itself.
All right, let's get this part out of the way.
The random light bulb. Yeah.
Let's get contact information out of the way. First off, if you would like to contact me directly, you can do so reploidbill@gmail.com. That is no space in between there. You can also find me as William Bush on Google+, or you can find me as Bill Bush on Facebook. If you would like to contact the show, that's Reploid Productions, that's no space, at gmail.com. Or you can be on our fan page, that's Reploid Productions, no space, on Facebook. If you would like to see the site and do some stuff like that, that's reploidproductions.com. Or if you would like to simply check out the show on another network like your phone or take us with you or whatever you're talking about there, Reploid Space Productions will usually find us on anything like Podkicker or Podsoup or yada yada or blah 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 and things like that. So now that we've done all that, let's get down to what we're talking about tonight. Tonight is the completion of a promise that was made when we very first started this thing years back. This is the Final Fantasy Legacy. We're moving on to part 2, and that means if anybody wasn't around for the first part, you can go check that out. The Final Fantasy Legacy was something that we started, we did not finish because the format made it very difficult to film, and it ran on and on and on, and it was difficult.
It was annoying as shit.
We were trying to go through every single version one at a time, and that's not what we're going to do here. We are going through the numbers. Only the numbers at first, and then we will go back to talk about other games that we feel deserve mention. Now, when we talk about numbers, step 1, we have to pick the very best version of Final Fantasy 2 and go with it.
By the way, this is Final Fantasy 2 from Japan, not the original American 2, which was actually 4.
If by somehow the people listening to a Final Fantasy Legacy podcast do not know this information yet, I am a little surprised, honestly, now.
It's still a thing. Well, because Super Nintendo is still classified as 2.
Right, but it's been fixed in every other adaptation, and if you haven't figured it out yet, it's just about the only way you don't know is if you didn't own the Super Nintendo.
No, still.
But it's possible.
It never hurts to mention that.
Since I didn't own a Super Nintendo, I didn't know.
See? That's right.
See?
That's about the only way you don't know. But anybody that played it in Super Nintendo definitely noticed that there was something weird going on when we had Part 2, and then they re-released it on the PlayStation as Part 4.
And we were sitting there going, what?
Yeah.
No, actually, we got Final Fantasy Origins first. And we're like, sweet, fucking Part 2, and we sit down and it's like,
yeah, it was a completely different game.
2.
Yeah, that's true. That would have been the first time you'd have noticed it.
I think maybe we should pick the Final Fantasy 2 that I played, which would have been on the PSP.
Actually, that'd probably be the best version of it.
That probably is the best version of it.
It's the only version I played of it.
It's the best looking one, and it still had all the stuff from Dawn of Souls, I think.
Mm-hmm. When you talk about the Final Fantasies, the early 1 and 2 and whatnot, it comes down to Dawn of Souls. And in terms of value, I would say that Dawn of Souls is your best cut because you could just get it and have both games.
Yeah.
But in terms of it looking the best, playing the best, having the best adaptation for the story and things like that, it probably is. Yeah. So, now that that's out of the way, the very first thing we do when we play a game is we see it.
Graphically, it looks a lot better than it did originally.
That's
why.
By great leaps and bounds.
It looked pretty.
Yeah, it did. It did. I even
the spells
all
were actually
16-bit glory.
I liked when you went into the battle, like that it had like a flare would come off your person and it would bright the screen real crazy and it had that little gleam that shot across the screen. That was sweet.
And then brought you right into battle. You're like,
Yep. But yeah, I liked that.
Final Fantasy 2. I didn't really like.
Well, that's moving to the
There's
second
a lot
part.
of not enjoyment from
First
two,
we see
but
it, then we play it. Next step is to talk gameplay.
I didn't like it.
I hated it for one reason.
What?
And one big reason is when I play a JRPG, I expect one thing with my level up system. I kill an enemy, I gain experience points. I level up, my stats rise accordingly. Not, I stand there, get my ass beat to an inch of death, finish the battle, maybe gain some health, go heal myself, jump into another fight, get my ass beat some more, then go and beat the battle, maybe gain some health, and go heal.
It was the Elder Scrolls before there was an Elder Scrolls. I mean, for people that there are some good things to this.
Like the spells, I like that. The spells leveling up as you use them, that was a good thing.
You buy a fire magic.
I didn't like the fact that
you use it.
If I use my fire spell, my spirit power dropped. If I use my cure spell, my mind power dropped. That was a little annoying. Granted, it makes sense because it makes you able to. Well, it makes you have to focus on a specialization for that character.
Mm-hmm.
But on top of that, if you use 2 fire spells in a fight and you defend once and that's the end of the fight, your strength also drops. Your endurance also drops. Unless you took a hit. So it was one of those extremely poorly balanced issues.
But it's how they made up for at the time, the first game, and the first game does, you can't select it during gameplay, but the first game is the first time there was a job system.
Yeah.
Because you pick a job. You pick out of 6 jobs, 4 people, you go on your quest. The second game wanted to give you the same thing, but they wanted there to be actual characters, and then they gave you a way to simply make the job. Want to punch? Punch.
Punch people.
Want to cast?
You'll build up your unarmed skill. Want
to be a holy knight? This is the first time you ever got a paladin. Equip yourself properly and learn all the healing spells.
Knight in 1 was paladin. Because you got basic level curative spells and you were able to wield
Technically
Excalibur,
yeah, I guess I'll give that to you.
Because as a classification, paladins are not supposed to be high-level white magic users. They're just supposed to be able to do basic healing.
But regardless, this was that point in time where you could simply be any class that you could imagine.
Now, something
if you wanted to be a battle mage, you could do so.
Now, something that was kind of cool and ridiculous at the same time, say you want to do a sword and board thing. So you want to have sword shield. But your sword skill is way up there already.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, well, fuck, it's going to take forever for my shield to level up.
Oh, I think I remember
So you put 2 shields on.
Yes. And
you just attack with 2 shields. Guess what? Your shield skill goes up twice as fast.
It's retarded.
That's
true. It was retarded. Now...
thankfully, you could not dual-wield bows. That would have pissed me off.
Trying to think of what else we should talk about within the gameplay elements. Of course, there was random battles. We're not going to get away from that in Final Fantasy until, 12? 11, technically speaking. Right?
No, those are still technically random encounters because monsters will spawn next to you and you'll be like, oh, dicks!
So it took till, Final Fantasy 12 to see the enemies right there on the screen and decide whether or not
sometimes
you're fighting
those respawn, too. 12 is
but
basically
they're on
11.
The screen.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. That means it's no longer random.
Yeah.
You can see them.
You see an enemy, you're like, I know I can beat that. You see a dinosaur, you know you're not to fight that.
Yeah, you leave that alone.
Yeah, you run from that bitch, because that thing will eat your face.
But before that, all Final Fantasies were I'm walking, and all of a sudden, Doomgaze just showed up. Doomgaze would just be like, by the way, I'm here, and you'd be like, fuck me.
That's basically the way it was. Actually, there was one really cool thing with Final Fantasy 2. And it was part story, but part gameplay at the same time.
If it inquires story, we don't go there
I said part story,
all
part
gameplay right now.
Because it mostly is gameplay. You get a lot of guest characters.
That's story. Leave it for story, because that's we didn't have this element in part 1, so you get what I'm saying?
Well,
I'll let you talk about it, though. Yes.
Which was actually pretty sweet.
In a way it is.
So, how's that? We'll just use that as a segue. But gameplay-wise...
Are we done with gameplay?
No,
Is there nothing else to mention?
The spells started looking different as you used them. That was another cool thing.
They also... What was it? Was it 12? 15?
16 levels of magic.
Level 16
so you cast
fire
your fire
magic.
You cast your fire, you keep casting that fire, and then like level 6 fire, it turns into a new type of fire.
Yeah, it looks like a
And
brand
you
new
keep
spell.
casting that, hit level 12, new type of fire. Hit max level 16, brand new type of fire.
So if you want to be crazy, you could have actually made like, you know what you could do? Might make you appreciate the game a little more. Probably not, but you could try it. You equip all your armors and shit, right?
Right.
Give one guy a lightning magic, one guy a fire magic, one guy a healing magic, and one guy an ice magic. Now you're Ronin warriors.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yes! I liked Ronin Warriors.
Actually, I did like Ronin Warriors.
Then you both suck.
He was being sarcastic. I
both
actually
need to
didn't mind.
watch
it.
No, I'm not being
real
sarcastic.
TV.
Oh, okay.
No,
I
he
actually-
loved it. He
I actually-
loved the Ronin warriors.
So I guess we're the only two that actually liked the Ronin. I thought it was a kind of cool thing.
When I was a kid,
It was
when I-
better than the Mystic Knights of Tyrannog or whatever the fuck that show was right after Power Rangers.
When
we were
I was a
growing up.
little kid, I remember kind of liking it. But it was the very beginning of my anime experience, and I didn't realize how Sailor Moon it was.
Well, it was a guy version of Sailor Moon. That's what
Right.
it was.
And at the time, I didn't realize that. It was Power Rangers, Sailor Moon. It fits in that category. There are multicolored warriors who do poses that each have a specialty that get beat up every other week and find an amazing way to win the battle that they should have never been able to win.
Yeah. But
And it follows
that's
a
how
format.
Reason why I
That's how it
liked
usually
it,
goes.
because I do like Power Rangers. Well, I
Right.
did like Power Rangers, and I do like Sailor Moon.
Right, and that's what
Sailor
I mean.
Mercury
So
for the win.
at the time, I was into that show.
Yes.
Fuck that.
But that's the, if I have to give something good to Final Fantasy 2, I'd say that aside from the way you level up in certain, this is really mid-grade. It's really difficult to grade on this because I both appreciate and despise
The
the
level up
entire
system.
system. I like the fact that I have full control over everything I plan to do in the game, but I hate the fact
That
I
you'll
have
suffer
full
in a lot of
control
stuff.
over everything I
Everything.
plan to do in the game.
Yeah, but you also have to understand exactly what's going to happen when you do something. You literally have to sit there and, like, every battle
Well, see-
is like, I have to plan my actions according to A, being able to kill the enemies as swiftly as possible, so I take less damage and don't expend a lot of magic, because I'm going to need that for this boss fight coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing you also have to worry about is, what does everyone have equipped? I'm already capped level on that. Do I need to be using this more, or do I need to be using it less? Third thing, you have to take into the whole thought process of, I swing my sword, I'm going to gain strength points, but that means I'm going to lose my spirit and intelligence.
So if you're trying to
If I'm
get
getting
magic,
my ass beat, I'm going to raise my endurance and my HP. If I burn my mana, I'm going to get more magic if I at least drop half of whatever my mana is.
it sounds very complicated, but basically what it comes
It's
down
overly
to
complicated
is this.
to
When you
such
play,
a simplistic way.
to put it down to a new age equivalent, you play Bravely Default. Now, if you're a warrior and you simply, I know that's not the class, but I'm just going to generalize it. If you're a warrior class, you pick that warrior class, it'll tell you that these are how your stats are going to be, how they're going to grow. Now, if you switch off that warrior because you feel like you've gone far enough and you become a white mage, your stats
Your
change
stats will switch.
immediately.
It's basically your stats will jump up and down depending on what the job level
Well,
is.
this happens gradually over time, which is what's detrimental. When I first played the game, my thought on it was, well, if I can teach everybody every spell, I'm gonna do it.
Well, you can't teach everybody every spell because you only get one ultimate and one meteor.
But I didn't know nothing
Holy.
about that at the
Oh,
time.
holy, well, whatever. I
At the
remember.
time when I first turned this game on, all I knew was the spells were in the shop. I bought them, I put them on every single character, and I was like, the spells level up? So all I did was wander in circles and use magic until it wouldn't buff anymore. And then I was like, now I want you to use spears, I want you to punch, you have 2 axes, and you have a sword and a shield.
Yep, sword
But
and
what
board
I
was
didn't
one of the best ways
realize-
to do because that's the only way to actually beat the game.
What it wasn't explaining to me, because there were no explanations back then, and even in the new version, they don't explain it. After I'd maxed out my magic, I started using my sword stuff. Now I felt strong, because by that time, my power had actually gone up so high by getting hit throughout the courses of battle and whatnot, that there was nothing in the area that could stop me. Until I reached about the 4th or 5th big guy, and I realized that neither my magic nor my weapons were at a peak. they both sucked efficiently.
I was waiting for something along those lines.
Like, that's the problem, is you'll get to a point where you've been trying to be like, I am ultimate. I have all this magic, all this healing, all this power, all this armor, and then you realize that what it does is it says, if you're using swords, it'll take you to about level 9 and it'll cap you because you're using magic. Now, the only way to change that is to continually use the swords that drops your power and magic so that the swords go up, but then your magic is capped and it won't go up anymore.
Yep.
So if you try to be everything, you end up being nothing. And by the time you figure this out, you're on like the 5th or 6th big guy, and you've put like 40-something hours into the game, and you're like, fuck me.
Okay. I just remembered one funny thing. And I know you've done it.
What?
Alright, so you get the canoe, right? You're like, alright, got this canoe.
That dude took it out of his pocket and gave it to me.
He's like, here's a canoe, guy. And you look at me and we're like, thanks, man.
He really does.
So
you walk up and there's a dude and he's doing that standard I walk in place thing. And
He's
you're
like,
hey,
"There
and
you
he's
go,
like,
it's a
a canoe? And I'm like, sure.
Well, after you carry
Thanks.
cabins around in your pocket,
Right.
why the fuck not?
I mean, yeah, I get
It's a canoe,
that.
fuck it. It's smaller than a house. Whatever. Anyways, no, you hop in your canoe, and because you've been doing this a little bit of exploring of the area around you, you're like, hey, wait, I got a canoe now. There's that little river thing down there, down below this starting town, and there's that little pond thing I gotta cross. They said to go there. What was past that little river thing? You pop across the river, you're like, la la la, I can kill monsters, blah 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 blah. Get into a battle, dead! There is no argument, it's beep beep, do 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 do, dead. You're like, I didn't even get to hear the full battle music. What just happened?
Because there's not a
Because the
level up
monsters are
system.
like stupid strong, because that's one of the end game areas.
And there's
You
no
can get there in the first 20 minutes of the game.
and there's no warning whatsoever. And since you don't level up in traditional Final Fantasy fashion, you can't just go down there and say, well, I'm about level 15. If I get beat, I need to level up some and go down there. It doesn't work that way.
Nope.
Because you can never actually tell exactly where your level is at any given time. You're basically playing Morrowind.
Now,
And when you walk into an area and get slayed in Morrowind, you're just like, well, shit. And
Now-
you don't level up. You just go be like, I couldn't hit this dude. I need to go swing my sword at crabs for the next 5 hours.
I do
Fuck
know.
that game.
Now, here's the thing. I do know a bullshit trick.
He knows a bullshit trick.
He did the
Sounds
bullshit.
about right.
Because you want to go south. You really fucking want to go south. Because that way you can go buy the best spells in the game, buy the best equipment in the game. You want that. Because it makes the game not as bullshit the rest of the game. It's still kind of bullshit, but
I
yeah.
was gonna say.
It makes it slightly less bullshit in your thought. You're like, alright, I at least have good armor. I at least have good swords
Which
and
means
spells.
nothing till you level up with it.
Yeah,
Right.
but at least you have it already. So that way you already have it on and you're good to go. If you take a couple steps and don't get into a fight, save the game. Take another couple of steps, save the game. Take another couple of steps. If you get into a fight, soft reset your game, load your game, take a couple steps, save. It constantly resets the battle counter.
Every time you reload, the battle counter resets. So you've got
But
at least
that battle counter could also say, when you reset, you might take that one step.
Yep.
Battle.
1 to 14
You might take 30
steps.
steps and then get a battle. That's how random that shit is.
And if you're willing to tolerate that all the way down to the town, you can buy stuff.
Yeah, you can buy a lot of shit.
I believe we've
I've done
covered
it twice.
I believe we've covered gameplay pretty efficiently. So, after we've played it, we engross ourselves within the tale.
All right, and here's our part segue because it's a combination of game mechanics and story.
Go for it.
Starting of the game, you get four kids.
Orphans.
None of which are my favorite characters.
They're not technically orphans just yet. That's not actually established until after the initial fight. We have the 4 kids from the same town. They all grew up together. Blah blah blah. Get their asses whooped by 4 knights. Only 3 kids are available when you wake up. Fourth kid miss, or just poof, missing, gone. So
He had better things to do, like watch Scooby-Doo.
Yeah. So for the most of the game, you get guest characters. You can control them.
One of which is my favorite character.
Minwoo, right?
Minwoo. He was my favorite character in the whole game.
The first time you get Minwoo, he's kind of alright. The second time you get Minwoo, oh my god, that dude could cast some motherfucking spells. He's like, oh, you need some healing? Boop!
Yeah, he has
spell.
like level 11s and 13s all the way down the map with almost every magic spell in the game, white based.
Well, that's the second time you get him. First time he's like at like level 5-ish. He's throwing some cure spells, throwing some protects,
Which is
stuff.
still better than what you're
Oh yeah. But that extra character there is very useful because A, that's an extra person to help you out and to take hits, which you kind of don't want, but you do at the same time because if you take too many hits, you're dead.
But you have to take hits so you can level up your life points.
Now, it's not in the PSP version,
His
but
face is great. He just looks so
Shane's
disgusted
like,
with the whole system.
Now here's the kicker though. I don't remember if it was in the PSP version or not, but I do know it was in the PS1 version. If you have 4 characters, your first 3 characters you can bullshit and level up whatever ability 1 level in that fight. Because it caps out at 100 experience for whatever it was. Then after the fight goes, you level that thing up, then you can keep working on it again next fight.
Right.
You can actually sit there and not swing once and just go through your entire list, say, cast fire, cast ice, cast cure, get some Minwoo, cancel back up, repeat process. Do that a buttload of times.
It was a screw up in the way the memory worked. Because like the pointer. You click the pointer, it goes down, you click the spell, it goes over to the enemy list, but you don't actually select an enemy. But because the pointer actually went to the battle screen, it counted as selecting a magic, which automatically puts the experience into your character.
Yep.
Now you back up and repeat process until you've leveled that status.
But you can do that for the first 3 characters as long as you have a 4th character. If you don't, then you can only do it for the first 2. So that was like a little glitch in the system. That had to deal with.
Does that make it better, Shane?
No.
No, he's still not impressed.
No.
So far though, we've told everybody how to break the game in 2 ways.
Yep.
1, go south, walk, save.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Best equipment, do it back up.
Yeah.
Now as soon as you get your first 4th character, just keep clicking
Well,
buttons.
that's
in and out, in and
only
out,
the
in and out.
PS1 version. I'd never tried it for the PSP because I was too disgusted. But
just don't play the game, man. That's like the easiest thing.
anyways, there's a lot of guest characters that you get. Minwoo's one of them. Then you get Joseph the monk type guy.
Yes.
Because he beats the fuck out of people and he's awesome. And he catches a boulder before it crushes him to death.
That's nothing compared to Sabine, so I don't
That
care.
was the first.
That was the first thing also. That was the first actual playable character that died. Was Joseph.
Yeah, your playable characters could die in the game. Only guest characters, but they could die.
Like, Joseph was the first to die. Sid, I don't think ever joined the party, but he died.
Storyline-wise, that's a step up from where they were.
Because they actually, it's like, you learned who Joseph was, you learned the plight of his town.
Yeah, it does. It's not like in other games like, let me think here. Like Persona 1, where they're like, this is your butler, you love him, he dies in the first cutscene. I'm like, I don't care. I don't know that dude. Like, you actually travel around with your 4th character for a good 4 or 5 hours, training, getting experience, going through 5 or 6 storylines, and then they're taken from you.
Well, Minwoo goes back the first time to deal with the princess and shit. And
and you pick him up later.
You pick him up later, but then he still dies.
But
by the way, spoiler alerts, but the game's been out for over 20 some odd years. So
I already said in the first game I'm not doing a spoiler alert. If they haven't figured out what Fandom Knight's about yet, I hope they know now.
Well,
it's like Joseph is the first to die because he stops a boulder long enough for you guys to get out of the way, and then the boulder runs him over, and then he still has enough vitality left after having every single bone in his body crushed by 10-ton boulder to be like, fuck my life. Alright, you gotta go save the peoples.
Yeah.
I'm finna die now.
Yes.
See ya.
Yeah,
Blah.
Sabine would have caught it and still would.
Sabine would have caught that thing and just picked it up. It's like, this is lighter than the house. Yeah.
No,
But he
you think
dies.
anything like a little boulder.
The pirate lady survives, if I remember right.
Pirates always.
Layla, I think her name is.
I think so.
She survives. Richard or Ricard, depending on which version you're playing, because that's the way they named him. It was Ricard or Richard. He's your dragoon. You get him for a little bit, he dies.
Yeah,
But
you
he was a
find him.
badass.
You find him in a whale.
Yeah.
Like he got ate, and
He
he
got
was
eaten
just
by a
fucking
whale.
hanging out in the stomach, like waiting to die.
Pinocchio.
He was just sitting there, he's like, how the
Kinda.
fuck do I get out of this place?
He didn't know how to get out, so he was just gonna sit down and wait to die. And then you fucking get in there, and you're like, "Who are you?" And he's like,
I'm the last of the dragoons.
"Yeah." He's like, "I'm the last of the dragoons. I'm waiting to be digested." And you're like, "How about we GTFO? How about that?"
He's like, that sounds like a good idea. Let's get the
he's
fuck
like,
out of here.
He's like, "That might be more preferable. I guess I'll give it a shot."
I mean,
And then he
granted-
dies anyway.
Well, yeah,
so-
but
how do
he
we get out?
sacrifices himself. That way you can utilize the dragon.
yeah. He was a cool dragoon, though.
He
I
was
have to
probably
say that
the coolest
especially in
variation
part
of
two.
dragoon.
In part two, he looks really, really cool. Mm-hmm. In the PSP version, he looks really cool.
So he's the best dragon.
I think he looks. I think he
Kane
looks
goes
cool.
up.
He looks way cooler than Kane.
He looks a lot cooler.
Like
than King does.
he looks really sweet. He really does.
have
His
you got to
character
show me a
design is
picture
pretty
later.
sweet.
We'll see if we can't find one for you. So you lost Joseph. You get Gordon for a little bit, which is a whiny prince bitch.
Yeah, I don't care.
Because his brother Scott was way more badass.
Yeah,
but
I'm already
he
done
died.
with that guy.
Wow.
Trying to think of who.
Did
it
he
He's
was.
Edgar. We're done with him.
He's Edgar.
He's not Edgar. He's Edward.
Yeah, Edward. Either way,
Edgar was a badass.
I'm done with him. Let's
Yeah,
move on.
yeah.
From him.
So you had those guys. Minwu dies unlocking the ultimate spell, which isn't Ultima for some reason. I think it was
at the
Meteor.
time, yep, at the time it was Meteor. It was all the way up until past Final Fantasy IV.
But we still got Ultima,
Right.
which was weird. It's like Ultima, you think, be like, Ultima, Ultimate.
It wasn't
hey,
until like
the
Final
greatest
Fantasy
magic.
like Final Fantasy V was the first time that Ultima finally outshadowed Meteor.
which was weird.
But it was in the game.
You would think that, I don't know, Meteor would be the best
Well,
spell.
one of the weird things is Flare was one of those oddball spells in the game.
That was super powerful.
No, you would think it would have like that fiery look that it always does.
Yeah.
No. It's like a negative flame. It's white, black, and blue.
Yeah, I remember
It's
that.
literally like looking at a fire, but the negatives of like a picture of fire. It looks sweet, but it was kind of awkward at the same time.
What's about Holy?
Okay.
But storyline, they actually had a good one. I did like the elements where you had, as you talked with people, you would get different catchphrases. and words.
This is what I wanted to talk about. For the first time ever, this is the first time I ever seen it, aside from like an old style computer texting game. This was the first time I ever seen it implemented on a graphical
I think
scale.
that was really the only time I've ever really
And
seen
it
But it
was
worked.
basically the predecessor to what gave us KOTOR, Mass Effect, Jade Empire. You would talk to people, and they would sometimes say very specific phrases that you could learn to memory. Then, anybody you talk to in the world, you can pull up a memory board of all the terms and things you've learned about and tell them about it.
Say
If you Wild
learned-
Rose is the first one you ever
Wild
learned.
Rose is the code word for the rebellion.
So certain people, if you mention the Wild Rose,
They'll talk to you about the rebellion.
and they may give you items and crap because they know you're a rebel.
And
if you
other
don't mention
people-
it, they've got nothing to say to you.
And other people you mention it to will immediately try to whoop that ass.
That's true. You got to be careful who you're talking to too, because some people are loyal to the Empire. And
you
you're
go up
talking
to
about,
a guard and say, "Hey, Wild Rose," they might just go, "Hipwa,
yeah, they try to kill you.
rape time."
Which back in that time, that was absolutely unheard of. And it remained unheard of because Final Fantasy II did not turn out to be that great of a game. It sadly remained unheard of for years after.
Yes, well, because we never actually saw it until Final Fantasy Origins on the PS1.
Even if we had, Japan didn't make use of it in any of their other games later
true.
on either. I mean, we just never seen that demographic again. They gave up on it.
I mean, it was really interesting, but some of it was kind of annoying at the same time. Like, you might forget to memorize
Now,
that
what's
word.
the main storyline so we can get this moving
The
forward?
main actual storyline is the Emperor is trying to take over the entire world and gain the powers of, I think it was like Pandora. No, not powers of Grayskull, damn it.
And let's
He's
put it
basically trying to gain all the powers of hell itself.
let's put it in perspective. The Emperor is he's considered to be the most cunning mind in Final Fantasy history. Every single thing that happens in Final Fantasy 2
He planned.
is because he allowed it to happen. Literally. Even you killing him at the end of the game was completely planned by the Emperor. He
Well,
wanted it.
Yeah, because when you kill his physical self, you grant him the power that he wanted, which causes him to become Demon Emperor guy.
In fact, later on, this is utilized again when we go to Final Fantasy Dissidia. He's the actual bad guy of the game. He's even manipulating chaos to do what he wants for a specific cause.
Yeah, to summon up Shinryu to wipe out the entire world so that way he can take it over and remake it the way he wants.
He is the actual bad guy.
Well, he's even more cunning than Kuja.
Kuja was a
Yes.
douchebag. Kefkaroth does not exist. Sorry.
Now,
That's my nickname for Kuja. He's
that's
Kefkaroth.
basically the whole story, is that these kids, they stop an evil emperor who's trying to rule the entire world, but he actually wanted them to do so that he could get the power to, quote unquote, rule the entire world.
Forgot one thing. If I remember right, I think you actually do have to fight the fourth kid before he joins your team.
Yeah,
'Cause he
he's
gets brainwashed as a Dark Knight.
Yeah, he is the first quote unquote evil good guy Dark Knight character-esque person.
Yeah.
Okay.
He starts off as a bad guy. By the
Well,
time
he
you
starts
get
off
to
as
realize,
a good guy,
yeah,
but it was so damn brief it's not funny.
yeah,
You all get left near death. He gets
He
dragged
disappears.
off and brainwashed.
when
And
he
then-
comes back, he's a Dark Knight. You end up defeating him, and then he joins your cause.
Yeah, because then he kind of remembers who. Well, he knows who you are. He just doesn't give a fuck.
So,
He's like, all right, well, you kicked my ass. I might as well help.
so he's
you
the
now."
first Cecil.
No. He's
In
just-
a way, no, I kind of have to agree that, because Cecil starts as a bad guy. He is a pawn of a corrupt governmental
yeah.
system. And he wakes up to the fact that what he's doing is wrong, and he says, never again.
He's like, yeah, we're done with this shit.
So yeah, I'll give
Yeah,
that to
that
you.
actually
He is
does work.
Cecil. He's also Cain, if you get right down to it.
Kane was a.
Because Cain is a good guy that becomes a bad guy, that becomes a good guy, that becomes a bad guy, that becomes a good guy. That becomes a bad guy to become a good guy. To stay a good guy.
Well, he stays a good guy until he looks into a mirror and then his darker self
Comes out
out
to
of there
be
and be a bad guy.
To
yeah.
be a bad guy.
Yeah.
So that he could stay a good guy.
Yeah.
So Kane's got a very.
And eventually he
complicated
becomes a
life.
holy good guy.
He has a
From
very,
all the way to a movie to a movie to a
See, the thing to that,
Kane's got a very complicated life.
It's a little ridiculous.
See, Cecil's life was a lot easier. It's like, I done fucked up.
Time to do right.
Fuck. Time to do something good with my life.
I-
And then Spirit of Dad goes, son. He's like, Dad, you done fucked up, boy. But I'll teach you how to be good again. Stop that. You're a paladin now. Yeah.
Kane didn't have a dad. He's like,
Cain stood up on a mountain for 20 years going, fuck. I fucked up bad. What the
So-
hell is wrong with me?
To move this, I believe we've covered all three major criteria.
so you want me to score it now?
You've heard all the facts. Anybody here
I'm going to start it right now.
anybody here, first off, if you're going to vote, you had to have actually played the game and have a real opinion about it.
Played and beat.
Or at least make sure that your opinion is well weighed, because we're trying to give these fair scores, not just you heard it sounds like dog shit, it gets a 1.
I've beat 2 iterations that I've played all 4.
Okay?
I've beat Dawn of Souls.
You got your math devices ready? Ready for some math?
Whoa,
Nope.
whoa, whoa!
No.
Hey,
Gotta be
shut
quiet.
up. No, basic math is easy now. Shut up.
I am here
I've
on
had years to regain my basic math skills.
I'm on the paper.
That's why I got a calculator in my hand.
Well, I will give my score.
Okay?
And my score will be this many. 2.
A 2?
2? All
Wow,
right.
you're giving it more than I am.
I
So I'm giving it a 1.5.
I give it a 2 because I played it, but of course I never beat it. I'm gonna let everyone know I've never beat any Final Fantasy, so but I do have an opinion on most of them.
Right.
'Cause I have played them to the very end. I just couldn't get past the final person.
Me, I'm giving it a 1.5
1.5.
because of the really poor level up system.
That's
and how
where-
much bullshit it was to actually deal with stuff.
The story.
Other than that, it was actually a pretty good game, but that one mechanic
That one
hurt
mechanic.
the game severely.
Yes. Yes.
That
So-
one mechanic really did hurt. That's why I didn't give it a fair chance.
Bill,
Anybody else besides
got
me?
nothing.
Seth
got-
got
okay.
nothing.
Then I'm
Jeremy,
the
you
only
got
other-
I think I played like maybe 5 minutes of it on my Game Boy, and I was like, nope.
All right.
He's like,
Then
I'm
I'm
done
the
with this.
only other fair candidate here, and I am going to also have to give it a 2. And my reasoning, because I have a massive love-hate relationship with this game. I believe that it had tremendous ideas that were ahead of its time, but none of them were implemented well, and because of that, it definitely falls short. It has a decent story with a good bad guy, and that's what we needed. It granted us the good guy character that has lost himself that we can bring back from the edge. I loved the conversational systems. I like the level up system and despise it at the exact same
Because
time.
of the same reason I do.
Right. So I have to give this a 2 and say that if it had been done better, this could have been a masterpiece. And if they would go back and fix some of the principles, it probably could be, but they just keep rehashing the same problems again and again and again. So it's
They
a
just
2.
make it look better. That's all.
Right.
So
Doesn't
we're-
need to look better, it needs to fucking play better.
Well, so we are looking at an overall score between the three of us of a 1.8 because I'm not doing the decimal places anymore past the first one.
Well, we kind of need to in case we have a tiebreaker.
It's a 1.83 repeating
That's fine. 1.83
with
is
a
what it's
line
going to
above
be.
the 3.
That's fine. No, 1.83. We're going to go the 2 decimals just in case.
Okay.
Just in case we end up with 2 that are so ridiculously close, we can place them. So, this has been our Final Fantasy 2 discussion. Stay tuned, and we will be going over 3 here on the Final Fantasy Legacy Fandom Night podcast. Toy, Dealy, Mobobber, Jiggy. Goodbye.